You heard the story about the two German girls that were deported from the US recently in Hawaii. If you haven't, I'll give you the quick summary here. So two young German girls about 18, 19 years old flew from New Zealand to Hawaii. They were planning to spend a few months in the US exploring Hawaii and the mainland, and then they were going to fly to Asia and continue their backpacking journey. However, they never entered the US. They were deported after spending a little bit of time with the immigration officials in Honolulu. They were also held overnight in a jail cell in Honolulu before being deported to Asia, which is where they were requested to go rather than going right back to New Zealand. This has gotten a lot of press coverage, but I think there's some really important context around it and some travel advice I want to give you. Number one, this has been happening for a long time. This has been happening since 9/11. If you follow the immigration forms, know the ins and outs, the US government does this to people all the time. I'm not saying it's right, but this is how they operate. Doesn't matter who the president is, they have been doing this to people for a very long time who come to the US for very innocent reasons. But here's the mistake they made and why they were deported. They were asked questions about their accommodation, which they did not have sufficient proof for the amount of time they were going to be in the US, and they were also asked about their financial situation. They showed the immigration officers evidence of some money they had in bank accounts, but the big and major mistake they made was they said, oh, we do freelance work, so we'll be okay. We can make some money. That basically means you are automatically going to get deported admitting something like that. Going to the US on a tourist visa or any other country for that matter, you cannot work. Never, ever admit to doing something like remote work when you are traveling to an immigration official. They will deport you. You are only permitted to go to that country for tourism purposes. You are not permitted to work. Now, that doesn't mean just doing work in that country. That also means any kind of remote work. Those are forbidden. So if you admit that to an immigration official, you will be deported. There are other visas that countries offer, like digital nomad visas. So if you're planning to do work in that country, they want you to get that visa. And if you don't have that visa, then they consider that fraud or not properly representing your intentions for visiting that country. So my biggest advice when traveling is never, ever say you are working. If you plan to answer a few emails, do not admit that. That will get you into huge trouble, and that's what got these girls into trouble. Second issue these girls ran into was not having proper evidence for all the places they were going to stay. They only had a hotel booked for a very short time. While it isn't an explicit requirement to have a hotel booked for every night when visiting a country, it is really a best practice to avoid trouble for yourself. Immigration officials might not ask for it, but if you start to hesitate about where you're staying, if you can't give a clear answer, they might demand more proof and ask a lot more questions.